Ladies and gentlemen, Robert De Niro. We'll just get a quick photo here.
Okay. Where's your lady? Hello to you.
Some water?
Yeah, thanks.
Robert, what a pleasure. I usually do introductions at the start, but I'm just not going to bother this afternoon. I remember an interview you did on the Graham Norton show, it must have been 5 or 6 years ago now. And Graham, rather like me, was completely starstruck and looked very nervous. And he didn't know what to call you. So he said, should I call you Robert, Sir Robert? And you just said, call me Barb.
Can I get a knighthood here?
So, if it was up to me, Bob. So the question is, shall I call you Robert, Bob, Sir Robert?
Bob.
Bob. Brilliant. Glad we got that out of the way. Look, it's really well known that you're extremely difficult to tie down to interview. You have flown over yesterday from the States to be with us from New York. And I've got lots of nice things to say about the union, but why the hell are you here?
Well, I wanted to get out of the house. And I was going to try and do this a little. There's a film I was going to do for a couple of days in Greece, so I said, well, let me stop here and arrange that. And then this other thing in Spain, it's 5 chefs, well-known chefs in Spain are cooking a meal for me in Madrid on Tuesday. And I said, well, let me come and do these 2 things. This I would like to do for you guys, of course, and that's a different type of experience, and it's that simple. The thing that I was going to do was pushed back, so I said, let me go anyway, and that's it.
Yeah, we were speaking earlier at lunch that we send you a letter, an email 3 times a year, every year, probably since the 80s. So you guys are very lucky.
Yeah, no, I don't know why, because, well, I don't know. But it looked like something I should do.
Yeah, great. And tell the chefs in Spain about the food here as well, please. Look, I'm not going to ask many questions because I'm sure there are literally hundreds out in the audience today, but I'll kick off with a few. I just wanted to ask at this stage, have you got any exciting projects on the go, film-wise? What are you up to at the moment?
I've got a couple of small things, like cameo-type things, and coming up in the next few months into the spring. And then that's it. I have other things in the fall, but I don't want to talk about them because I don't really know what's going to happen. They're supposed to go and this and that. Some very great projects, but I'm superstitious about whether, if you talk about it, there's the expression talk it away, but there's also just, you never know. So I'd rather wait and let it just happen.
Well, I'll ask one more question. Are they producing roles or are they acting roles? Or?
Yeah, acting.
Okay, that's for us. Very exciting. Okay, you are probably the best actor we've had the pleasure to welcome to our chamber before, and I've gone through the records, and I just can't.
Nice, yeah.
Okay. And whilst I was thinking about what to ask you for this this event, I watched a lot of interviews of other people talking about you, and they all had a sort of similar theme, but the one that stuck out was Leonardo DiCaprio talking about you at an award ceremony, and he said that you were the quote consummate actor. So I didn't quite know what specifically he meant. That was the end of the comment. So my question to you is what. What makes a great actor as opposed to a good actor? Why are you the consummate actor?
I don't know. It's probably better for critics to say that, or people, or the audience. I mean, there are many types of actors who are not actors, don't do what I do, and they're great in a certain way. I don't know. I remember when I was a student, I was 17, studying at a place called the Dramatic Workshop, and there was the head of the school at the time, said, why do you want to be an actor? I said, I wasn't sure, I just wanted to go, but I really, he said, because you want to express yourself. And I said, okay, that's a good reason, and I think that that's true.
And when you look at new people in the industry now, is there anyone you're really excited about? Any actors you're really excited about? And what are the qualities that you think makes them impressive?
There are so many wonderful actors around these days because there's so much more to do. When I was younger, in my 20s, there were what you call independent films, but not like today. Everything on television, this and that, it's just endless. All the opportunities for not only actors, but everybody who works in that type of entertainment. I mean, I just saw Jessica Chastain in something about Tammy Faye. She was wonderful in it. I saw Cate Blanchett in a couple of things. We all know how great she is. Leo DiCaprio is wonderful in things he does, and I can't. There's Christian Bale, who's older generation, but between mine and the next generation. And I can't even, I'm forgetting so many wonderful actors that it's endless. Just great actors. I mean, I couldn't do what they do, so.
I'm sure you could. Nonetheless, you made a few points there about the industry as a whole, and your first feature film, is it 1965? I can't quite remember what your first feature film was.
It was the wedding party with Brian De Palma.
And that was 60s?
Yeah, I was 19.
19.
So let's see, it was 63. Yeah, it was early 60s, 61,
so, I mean,
60, 61.
You've been in the industry for decades, and we were talking about The Irishman earlier, and the Netflix release of that. How much has the industry changed since you entered it as a 19-year-old, and what do you think are the biggest changes?
Well, the biggest changes are like I say, so many other, what do you call them, formats come out or whatever on television. It's not television the way I used to know it. It was, the actors always had a conflict whether they would go to California and test for a TV series, which might mean in those days a 7-year contract, a commitment to time. If it worked, 7 years. The only upside to that, if it lasted 7 years, you could be assured to think the way I think I understand it is that you would live off residuals for a good part of your life. The other thing is that it's a step down doing a TV thing, which is not respected the way doing movies is. Some television stuff was respected, but not the way it is today. There's great stuff on television all over the place. What was it? The original part?
What are the big changes? What are the key changes in the
industry?
industry?
That's it. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. Everything is, and then they have all these sort of tentpole films, Marvel, blah blah, the big ones, and that's another thing. I think what I remember when all that started, there were 3 movies that sort of started the blockbuster type thing, if you will. It was Godfather 1, 2, Jaws, and The Exorcist, and that was kind of set it off in motion. But today it's a whole other thing. So many people can work, and the place, everything is saturated with good material, good stuff.
You were speaking earlier about the Irishman and Scorsese. We'll talk perhaps a bit more about that in a second. But one of the things you remarked on was cinemas and the place of cinemas in film culture. Are they going to become obsolete, or do you think there's still a place for watching films at cinema today?
That's a good question. I don't know. It really, the experience of watching a movie, especially say a comedy in a theater, is not the same. At home, if you're with a bunch of friends and family, you can get a good thing out of it. But it's like a movie I did. I told the director the other day. They sent me. They wanted me to look at it, and I said, I got to look at it with an audience, because when you look at it in a vacuum, in a screening room or at home, it's just not the same. And so we set up a bunch of people, the director set up, the producer set up people to come watch, 15, 20 people. We watched it. Nobody knew I was there, because he didn't want them to feel that, you know, they'd have to have some kind of good reaction because I was there. I snuck in and snuck out after it started and before it ended. And I could get a much better sense of that just with the audience. And even though this was a kind of partial audience because they were friends and relatives, but that's okay, that's better than nothing. So I think going to a movie and seeing certain films, the energy that comes out of the audience, watching a movie that has funny parts, emotional parts, whatever, that's something to be thought about and considered. I don't know how it's going to go in the future. What will? It seems to me, especially with the pandemic, it's just created the situation, or helped accelerate it, if you will. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Sort of following up on that point about, you know, scripts getting shown to you, or, you know, films getting shown to you. I imagine you get tens and tens and hundreds of scripts shown to you.
Not really, but
really?
Anyway.
Well, I imagine over your career you've had tens and tens of hundreds of scripts shown to you.
You know.
So, I mean, now, what are the things that are in your mind when working out whether to take on a project? What are you thinking about? Is it sort of certain principles, certain people? What are you thinking about?
Well, it's the people, of course. The material is, that has to be special. There are special people I've worked with over the years, I'd work with again, and just about commit. I'm waiting on the material, though I know it's going to be special, and when it comes, it is special. Those people I wait, we talk, I get versions of the script coming, and those are the things that are worth working on, waiting for, as I am doing now with a couple of projects. The ones I said I didn't want to talk about because I want to wait. They've been concretized, if you will, made go pictures, if you will.
Well, I've got two more questions, and I think I'll open it up. One is a very short one. Do you have a favourite part that you've played in your career?
Huh?
A favourite part, a favourite role that you've done in your career?
Well, I had fun. This movie I just did called About My Father with Sebastian Maniscalco, who is a comedian, Italian-American comedian. I don't know if they know him here, if he's ever played here. He has big audiences in the States. And he wrote a script with the director, Laura Taruso, who's Italian-American and understands the world, about his relationship with his father. And that was fun to do. And coming from a real place, because they both knew the director, Laura, and Sebastian, of course. His jokes are about his family and stuff like that. They're real. I had fun doing Midnight Run. We've always tried over the years to do a sequel in whatever way it could be done, and we still are. I enjoyed Analyze This. I enjoyed the Meet the Fockers, you know, those movies. They're fun. Comedies are fun. Can I say the best one, my favorite? No, it's always hard. People ask. It's like asking about your favorite child. Even though you might have it, you can't say it. So.
Okay, last question from me, and I'm sure this will be followed up. I have people here today, but we probably have to talk about your relationship with Martin Scorsese. It's one of the most fruitful and illustrious partnerships in the history of film. It's 10 films you've done now, including this one that's coming out. Can you pick out or distill what it is that has meant you have kept collaborating again and again over such a long period of time? Can you distill what that is?
I've just been very lucky to been able to work with Marty all these years. He's very good with taking chances, trying something that you want to do, and will always keep the guardrails up if you're going to go too crazy. And the most he'll do is he'll try it and he'll cut it out, you know. So there's a certain freedom with him. And it's not just with me. Other actors have the same feeling about him. Other people in production designer, anybody in the creative, the costume designer, anybody in the DP, director of photography, all have, I think, with Marty. He has very specific ideas. certain times, and in the telling of the story visually, say with the DP, and how we track a shot, do this, zoom, that, close up. But even then, he has flexibility. He's always listening to whatever the suggestion will be from whoever the creative input is.
Mm. I mean, the films are beautifully shot. Is there any sort of, it goes without saying, is there any sort of principles about film that you think you share with Martin?
Well, we're same age, practically a couple of months apart, so we as kids would see movies traditionally in the big movie theaters, a double bill. Certain movies had an influence on us, but Marty would go much further in watching movies, and as time went on, I always say I'll ask him about a movie by some director from Indonesia or wherever else, or Africa or something, and he'll know that. Good chance he'll be aware of that director or that movie, which I'm like lost. I'm like, he's way off, but he's like, that's what he does. He's like an encyclopedia of film.
Yeah, well, that sticks out a lot. You're both genuine movie fans.
Yeah.
You love film.
But emotionally, we both feel the same way about films that have influenced us as kids and over the years when we were younger and even today. And we have just a very lucky situation where we work together well. I don't know how to explain it.
We better open up to the audience because I'm sure we've got a lot of questions to get through here. So if you'd like to put up your hands, this is going to be practically impossible. Do you want to pick? Do you want to pick?
Me? I don't know. Jesus.
Well, there was just should we just go here right at the front to start off with? Just here.
Thank you so much for being here. Any advice for aspiring actors?
Yeah, I always say, just you got to keep trying, you got to keep going. You can't worry about feeling rejected. I always say, if you don't go, you'll never know. That's to an audition, say. An audition that you know already, say if it's in the theater. I don't know, I haven't gone to an audition for a while. Well, there have been some situations where I say, let's have a reading of this. The director, the writer, and I say, let's have a reading of this, a table reading, and let's read it for all of us. Let's make sure you really want me for this and that I feel I'm right. I have done that in the last couple of years from time to time. Just so nobody can feel like, oh no, now we're committed to him. I'm not so sure about him now after I saw him read. Even though a table reading is kind of it's kind of a laid back, you're not performing, you're just doing what you can do without getting all worked up. But I always tell young actors when you go to meet a director and you're reading for something, don't be afraid to take chances and follow your instinct even though it's wrong. If it's your gut instinct, follow it because you're not going to get the part. So at least the casting director, more importantly than the director, will notice that and say to the next director, I have somebody who is interesting. They're not what you have in mind for this part, but I think you should meet them. Because that could be where that director would say, you know what, they're not the way I envisioned this character, but they are working and they're so interesting in what they're doing, I'd rather use them. So the point is you should go in auditions with an abandonment and assume very seriously you're not going to get it. I mean, really, it's that simple. And maybe you'll get lucky.
I feel vindicated. That was an excellent question. But the person behind looks so upset that I will go to the girl just behind. Thank you.
Yeah, I finally have my chance. Ben once said that the best reason to carry a handkerchief is to lend it, so I will be happy to lend you mine. But my question is that given the fact that these days most of the artists are being involved in controversies, what is your stance with respect to separating the art from the artist or vice versa? Thank you.
Rephrase the question.
Separating the art from the artist.
In the sense of...
Given that a lot of the people are getting involved in controversies which we as a society may not look at favorably, and they may not be casted in the films later on, say for example. What is your take on separating the art from the artist? Because they could be wonderful actors, but pathetic human beings.
Yeah, there is a separation, but I think there are things that are going on, especially today in the world, that if you have a voice and you see what's happening, that you have the right to say something about it. You must. You have to. I mean, look what's happening today. You have to say something. We're in a world that's getting smaller and smaller, and we all have to stick together. And there are people in the world who I don't understand them. They think differently. They don't think for the world, whether it be climate change, whether it be the political situation, if you want to call it that. We see what's happening in Ukraine now. You have to stand up and say, we can't do that. It's wrong. It's that simple. It's not even about democracy. It's about right and wrong, the truth, period.
You should do our publicity for us, Bob. I'm going to go to this side of the room now. I'll just go here, if that's okay. There's a microphone.
Bob, privilege to have you here. But it's a privilege for all of us to be in this room, which for 200 years has been a focus for free speech and democracy. We all know what's happening in Ukraine right now. What's your comment on that? And is the United States doing enough?
Well, that's a good question. You know, everybody says, I've been watching the news, and some people say, well, you know, they're not doing enough. You've got to be, the sanctions, I don't know how all that really works. I sort of do, but don't, and don't how much of a bite they have, what teeth they have. That's really the question, because my fear is that this thing will go on, and people get bored watching it even, and all of a sudden you've got a country like the Ukraine that has been overtaken, and you know it shouldn't be. There might have to be a stronger position taken by people, and then also, this is a terrible thing to be aware of, but we have nuclear weapons that people threaten that they have, and then but if you use those, nobody's gonna be around anymore. I can't imagine this world being in that state. But we have to do something. People, there has to be a way to stop this kind of aggression. You see the fool we had in our country.
Who would that be? Sorry.
You see, I don't know how gullible people are, but they also have their own interests. So they know he's a fool, but they still go along with it, either by fear or they want to use him. I mean, I think if someone like him ever, God forbid, became president again, we would have the same situation in North America, where we don't like what Canada did. They did something because he's so, they affronted us in some way. So now we have to find an excuse to go in there. Hard to believe, hard to imagine, but I was just thinking about that this morning. It's impossible to do. You can't do it, but it could happen. Or in Mexico, some reason to go down there, which would be nonsense, but it would be. We have to be very careful. That's why there are rules. That's why we can't allow what is happening in Ukraine with people. And that's why a democracy is the way we must go in order to keep this world sane and level-headed and floating, if you will. more eloquent ways of saying it, but that's my way.
Anyone up in the rafters who'd like to ask a question? Oh, lots. Okay. What's there, please? That's you, yep.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. Yeah, it's such an honour. You mentioned your love of film, and I was wondering about the kind of the films or directors you were watching as you were growing up that kind of made you fall in love with film. I feel like with your collaboration with Scorsese, the kind of influence of Italian neorealism is there. I wonder, yeah, as a kid, what kind of films you were watching and what made you love film?
Oh, I always talk about, East of Eden, James Dean, A Place in the Sun with Montgomery Clift, The Searchers, John Wayne was in, some of the Tennessee Williams or Kazan, On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire. Those are the films that I watched as a kid. Sometimes a little more arty film like Jean Cocteau, what is it? The famous Cocteau film, I'm forgetting the title. Anyway, my father took me to that one. But the ones that you normally see in the movie theaters, the Loews, those are the ones. The neighborhood theaters, those are the ones that I was affected by. And then later on, the films like Saturday Night and Sunday Morning with Albert Finney, of course, 2001, the one with there's A Taste of Honey, when I was a young actor and so on. Those are great. Fellini, Antonioni, all those Italian directors. There's other ones, but I'm forgetting.
I'll try and go to the back on both sides now. So I'm going to go right to the very back of the room, just in the corner there.
Kind of on the same note, is there a more modern movie that you keep going back to and watching over and over again? Something that brings you comfort or joy?
What is that?
So is there a film you keep going back to over and over again that brings you comfort or joy, was the question? A film that you keep going back to, a modern film that you keep watching over and over again?
No. No, I wish I could, because I have friends who watch movies over and they watch them, they always find something new and different. And I don't do that, but that's my fault, Yeah.
Right at the back on that side, yeah.
Thank you. My name's Monique, and my question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received in life? Not only in relation to acting, but just as, in general. Thank you.
The best piece of advice, I'm sure there's something, but I can't. You have to be very careful. I don't know if I have that answer to the question like that, but I know as I get older, you have to be very careful about what you, especially these days with what the truth is, what lies are, what people will believe, even though it's not the truth, what they want to believe, though they know it's not the truth. There's so many things that to me is the most important thing, to be discerning about what you're getting into and then what you're going to do about it. Because we're living especially these days, I think the most important thing is to follow your instincts, what you think, what you have determined is right. Maybe if it's even uncomfortable, maybe if it's even, but you have to act upon it. That's the closest I would say. You got to stick to it. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you are, where a lot of people are now, where they're going to have to compromise in a way, being part of something that they know is wrong. like a lot of the politicians, the Republicans in America, who privately will admit that this is insanity, but then they'll go along with it. Well, what are you going to go along with? What are your grandkids going to read about? That you did nothing? If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And those people have a responsibility. They represent us. Look what they're doing. It's scary.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. De Niro. Thank you very much for being here. I'm a massive fan. You spoke before about your relationship with Scorsese, but you've also had a very good relationship with other actors. For example, my favorite is probably you and Al Pacino. I just wondered, what is it about an actor that makes you want to collaborate with them, and what makes that collaboration successful?
It's just, who knows if it's successful, but you know you want to do it. And in the case of The Irishman, it was a project that Marty and I were working on another movie, and I always meant to read the book, I Heard You Paint Houses, and as research for this. And when I finally did read it, a couple of years after it came out, I realized that I said, Marty, you have to read this book, because it just has a lot more in relation to what we would want to do. And he did. So we had to change it, and then we went about trying to do this movie, which is very difficult, because we were going to do it with Paramount, but they said, you signed on for this. They greenlit the movie, and so now we're doing that, and it was a whole thing. Whether it would be, in this case, talking to Marty about Al Pacino playing Jimmy Hoffa, Joe Pesci playing Russell Bufalino, that's it. I knew that they'd be great in the movie, and Marty did, and we just, I don't know if that's fully answering your question, but I don't know if you want to ask me something else about it, but.
Thank you. Could you talk about how you mentally and physically prepare for acting roles?
Do you hear that? How do you prepare mentally and physically for acting roles? For acting roles, for roles?
Well, it depends. Everything is different. Everything is different. When I was just thinking about a movie I did here many years ago. I don't know if anybody saw it even. With Kenneth Branagh directed it, called Frankenstein, and I did a lot of preparation on a lot of work for the whatever you want to call it, the monster or whatever. I had these. The walk was a certain way. I wanted to create something sized too. So in those days, they used to have these kind of like plastic things. They were like half I don't know what you call them, concave type thing. And when you'd walk on them, they'd bounce like this. So you'd step on them, and you'd walk, and they'd give you height. And they were like some gimmick for exercises or something at that time. And I said, let me get those, put them, get those things and start walking and using those. Stuff like that. I did a movie called Flawless, and I was supposed to be, I had a stroke, so I found ways of hanging weights on my left arm so that it would be more immobilized, and anything to physically change me without my having to make it happen without that actual impediment. Things like that, or it could be anything, any kind of thing to pull me out of myself and into that character the way I thought and the director thought it would be.
You did you have to do any water polo training for Meet the Fuckers? Meet the Parents, is it? I can't remember which one it is. You have to play water polo. Meet the Parents. Any training for that, for the water polo? You're very good.
Not training. I don't know if you. I spoke to some people in the CIA and all that friends who were telling about this certain things that we used.
You're natural. You're
Huh?
natural. You're a natural.
Whatever. I mean, there are things. There's some things I've forgotten about. I forgot what I've done.
Just a.
Which movie do you miss filming the most?
Did I miss?
Yeah, just being on the set of, or the atmosphere.
I had a good time on The Irishman with Marty. We always have a good kind of easy way we get there. I had a very good time on that film. And I had a good time on About My Father, too. A tighter schedule, more immediate, if you will, as far as getting things. But it was all good. It was all good. And also Killers of the Flower Moon. But even more The Irishman.
Do you feel like you're getting better at what you do? And if yes, how do you do that?
What was the last part of the question?
Do you think you're still getting better at what you do? And if you are, how do you do that?
That's a good question. I think you get more confident as you're older, and you realize certain things are not necessary to get from A to B to C. And so you cannot waste as much energy on that. And the most important thing is to be relaxed and never anticipate things. Just let them happen. Like certain scenes or emotional scenes. I don't think about it. It's the old joke of, you all know this joke, I'm sure. Hark, I hear the cannon roar. You don't know this joke? This actor can't remember his lines, and so they finally people don't work with him anymore, but he runs into an old friend of his as a director. Says, look, I'm doing a play, and it's a Shakespearean play, 3 acts, and all you have to say is, hark, I hear the cannon roar. And he said, I don't know, I'm afraid, I can't, my lines, I get nervous, I can't. I said, don't worry, you're gonna do it. He said, okay. It's in the 3rd act, all you do is you run out, the beginning, you hear the explosion, you run out and say, hark, I hear the cannon roar. So, okay. So he rehearses, he has it on his dressing room, he has hark, I hear the cannon roar, hark, I hear the cannon roar, hark, I hear the cannon roar, hark, I hear the cannon roar. He has all the different ways it could be said. And so finally the big day, the opening night, he comes, 1st act, okay, 2nd act, 3rd act, gets ready, stage manager says, get ready, okay, you're about to go. After the intermission, all of a sudden he's waiting in the wings, all of a sudden, he says, oh, it's time for him to run out. He hears his cue, he runs out onto the stage, boom! Turns around and says, what the fuck was that?
So don't overthink it. Is that
right?
I'll go back to this side, I think. Just here, gentleman I met in the foyer earlier.
Thank you so much for coming today. You've had so many iconic quotes throughout your career. I was just wondering if you had a line that stayed with you or a favorite line from any of your films.
What was that?
You've had so many iconic quotes in your films that people quote you on. I was just wondering if you had a favorite line from any of your films.
What?
Favorite line, a favorite quote from any of your films that you've made.
No, some people always say the ones to me sometimes. Or they say it to me. I said, no, I don't know. No. Once a person said to me, are you talking to me? And I said, you're the only one here.
Okay, can I say it?
No, I just said it.
When you're not acting, producing, or directing, what do you enjoy doing?
Well, the last couple of years, I've been, I have my kids and my personal life and all that. It's really takes a lot of my time, obviously. But I've been watching a lot of television instead of watching old movies, or even current things that I should be watching. Been watching a lot of the news, a lot of what's happening, especially when Trump was president. What insanity we're living in. So that's how I spend. There's I don't know, something personal, friends, this and that, kids.
Were you in New York during the pandemic at home?
Yeah, New York and outside the city too.
Hi, you said earlier about going to auditions and hopefully getting lucky. And I wondered what you think was your lucky break and how much of acting is based on luck as well as hard work and obviously talent.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be in the right place at the right time helps. If you're there and they're casting a certain thing, and you happen to be there and right for it, that takes some luck. But the thing that happens, I think, with actors, what you hear about is that, say, there's an actor who. That's why I was saying, don't be afraid to take a chance when you go for readings, because you might not get this part, most likely you won't get it, but you'll get recognized and eventually people will talk about you and say, that's an interesting actor, they do this. So they'll want to see more of you. And that you work hard, you keep on it. And that's what I would say. That make sense?
Hi, you've spoken quite movingly about the dangers of people not thinking or being unthinking, and some of the roles that we've discussed today, like The Irishman or Taxi Driver, you really evocatively portray these people who struggle to articulate their thoughts or why they do things. I just wondered what appealed to you about those kinds of roles.
Well, they're more interesting in a way because you see they're not more complex. I could say that. I mean, everybody who read Taxi Driver, me, Marty, Paul wrote it, Paul Schrader, but Michael and Julia Phillips, everybody was taken by the script. I remember when we were all going to do it, and it was a script we all couldn't wait to do. And it's interesting, even in that, you could identify with the Travis character, the alienation. And I'm from New York, born and raised in the Village. I could identify with the alienation. So it just, something about that story, that script that Paul wrote, Paul Schrader, we wanted to do. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but it's.
I'm going to just ask a quick question. So, talking about roles you've taken on, I suppose another defining feature is the sort of Italian-American link in a lot of the films you've done, and you're, from New York, strong Italian-American culture in New York. And it was interesting listening to talk about the research you did before The Irishman into sort of the mafia and things like that. So have you become a bit of a sort of amateur expert, if that's not a contradiction as a term, about Italian-American culture, mafia culture, those sorts of things? Have you become sort of a bit of an expert on those subjects? Yeah.
Yes.
When did that start?
Well, I had, when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time in Italian-American neighborhoods that Scorsese was from. And so it was interesting because he and I weren't in the same crew, if you will. We stood at, as you say, in different blocks, different areas, but we had some mutual friends who go between the groups, and they'd tell us what they're doing, and back and forth, and that was it. So I had that experience. And I don't think it really has. It might have some connection to why Marty and I work together so much, but it's like I don't really. Part of it is, but most of it, or at least 50 or 60%, 40% maybe, is other stuff. Our own coming together and what we want to do. Because he was more religious in a way, and everything almost became a priest. My own life was not that way, but we came together as creatively. We always just had a way. We have long talks about stuff. Like if there was a scene that we were about to work on, I'd say, well, this reminds me of something I went through. It's not the same, but there's some parallels there. We could use that to kind of, for this scene, this particular incident, this particular moment. So in that way, we had, I remember having a lot of very good conversations with him.
But like, if Godfather, Casino, Goodfellas, The Irishman, is the reason that you picked those roles because of the Italian-American connection? Is that why you did them?
Yeah, I mean, I like them, and they happen to be, I guess they are, but if they're written well, if they're done well, by being done well, I mean written well, created well, I'd say, I like to do them, and I understand what that is, so I'd like to.
Because the second Godfather you do almost entirely in Italian, isn't it?
And it's Sicilian.
Yeah, it's Sicilian.
Yeah.
My question is, do you feel like the film industry has developed in a way where it's more focused on sort of special effects, spectacle, rather than character-driven plot? And if yes, is that a problem?
You're talking about the big sort of, no, I think I have not had much experience in those movies. So I don't, there's always a way to get character or get, things that are, which the actors who work in them do, from what I've seen. Does that answer the question? You sure?
The woman in the glasses, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. You're a great source of inspiration to a lot of young creatives like myself. I was just wondering what you think the future of the film industry looks like, and if there'll be a growing obligation for directors to be providing social commentaries and stuff like that.
What was the last part of the question?
If there's a greater obligation for directors to be providing social commentaries or critiques.
You mean of the movies that they made?
Of the general world and like the political happenings.
Yeah. I'm just not sure exactly.
So is there an obligation on filmmakers today to say something about politics and society?
No, there's no obligation. Maybe you say it through your work in some way, if you're more of the writer, I guess, and the actor, director, of course. No, there's no obligation. I say stuff because I don't really like to get involved in that stuff, but I see that it's such a crazy state of affairs that you have to say something. It's crazy.
It sort of connects to the question we had earlier, though, about separating the art from the artist, I suppose. Do you think it's more difficult for actors and directors to not comment on what's going on in the world, and is that a bad thing? In the past, we wouldn't have had criticisms about people not saying something about something in political, social circles. They're just making a film.
Yes. I think, I would say that again, because I'm trying to, some people will make comments politically about stuff, or others won't, and that's their right. I mean, it's just what you feel and what you see before you, and if you have a platform, if you will, and you think it'll make a difference, it could, then you say something. That's what I feel. Yeah. Nobody's obligated to do it.
Yeah, and I suppose just one last question on that. Is it important that we preserve a space where artists in film cannot do that if they don't want to, if they just want to be an actor?
That's their right. Yeah, they could be the best actor, the greatest of all time. They don't have to say anything.
Hope that answers the question. Yeah, just
I mean, I do think people have to say stuff, though, at the same time. We're getting to a point. Sorry? Exactly, yeah. You have to say something. Nobody expects you to. But, you know, it's like Leni Riefenstahl was a great director of sorts, did a great thing, but she worked for, and that's a stigma that she had, period. Sorry. Walk away, do something. Don't be part of the problem. Be the solution. Because if you're not the solution, you're the problem. And that's a classic example of it.
Thank you. I was just wondering, as we mentioned all afternoon, you've been involved in some incredible iconic roles through history, through the movies. Some of them, you know, stand the test of time and will be there forever. But was there any role that you would have loved to play, excuse me, but you logistically or time-wise didn't have the opportunity to do it? And I don't want to say regret, but you would have thought, actually, I would have quite liked to play that role.
I wasn't sure what
any role that you couldn't play for whatever reason, logistical, or you're doing other projects that you really wish you could have done in hindsight?
No, I've been okay, pretty lucky with everything. I have. There are a couple I wish I had done, but I'm not losing sleep over it. I just it was unfortunate that I couldn't at the time, but there wasn't something that would have been the end all and be all. Because if it was, I would have found a way to do it. I like to think.
Thank you for being here with us today, Mr. De Niro, big fan. So I was actually recently watching one of your movies, Silver Linings Playbook, and towards the end of the movie, you tell Bradley Cooper's character that there are moments in life where life reaches out, and if you don't reach back out, it's a sin. So were there any moments in your life where that happened, where you felt life reaching out and you might have had reservation, but you felt you had to reach back out to life?
I guess, but I either can't remember them or I don't want to remember them. But there's always something, I guess. I always like to think that I did my best, you know, but everybody likes to think they did their best, I guess.
Hello, thank you for coming today. I was just wondering, you've done a lot in your career and a lot in your life, and I was wondering if, for you personally, what's your greatest achievement, or professionally?
Well, you know, on a personal level, my children. On a professional level, the movies that I got a good amount of recognition for. And I'd like to think for the right reasons, you know. I guess that's it. You know, I have a couple of projects coming up that I really I'm looking forward to doing, and they're going to be special. Also, I'm thinking that I'm getting older, you know, and that's what The Irishman too is about. So those are things, you know, you're always aware of time. So, but I always like to think that not all my movies, but some of them will be recognized for being very special. And that's sometimes what I would think and say, like Raging Bull with Marty. It's not about, we're going to do something. If I know anything, I know it's going to be special. That's all I can say.
Thank you. You've mentioned the role of luck in acting before already. Now, you've been very successful in your career, but many actors struggle to make a living. So, given that risk, is it actually a good idea to become an actor? Would you recommend it to anyone?
You're basically asking would I recommend to be an actor to anyone? Was that?
Yeah.
Of course, I would. If that's what you want to do, the main thing is you have to really want to do it, and don't assume that you're going to be successful at it. But I do feel that if you work very hard and you are serious about it, you will have a certain amount of success at getting work, doing things, and that should be satisfying. no matter what that would be in regional theater, and especially here in England, and movies, television, whatever. I mean, it's just a matter of committing to it and what you really want to do. So I could never say, like to any of my kids, never be an actor. In fact, one of my kids studied acting, then went into computer technology, computer science, and now has split it in his college stuff and did postgraduate computer. But he is thinking of acting too. So, but he has something that's real to fall back on. And you always hear about the parents, get a real job, then you can do it. I never said that. I just was lucky that one of my kids did it on his own. I'm very proud of him.
Did you have something to fall back on as a 19-year-old?
No.
Right, who's up there? Is anyone questions up there? Yeah, here. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned Paul Schrader earlier, writer of Taxi Driver. Obviously, you've all mentioned how you've worked with Scorsese a lot, but you've worked with a lot of Paul Schrader scripts as well, as I know you've been in the film he's directed. And you clearly, have an attraction to a lot of Paul Schrader scripts. I was just wondering what it is that attracts you to his writing, or indeed, I know you're good friends, or at least you get on, what he's like, what your relationship with him is like.
So, Paul, what attracts you to Paul's writing, and what do you like about it?
Well, in Taxi Driver, it was a wonderful script. As I say, we all felt that way. Paul and I are friends, but we don't hang out together, so we respect he also, as far as working together, Marty had him, because originally with Raging Bull, I had this idea, well, I'll do it as a one-man kind of a show on Broadway or something, and then I'll do that at night and shoot it in the day, and that way I will have kind of rehearsed it and had it down more in certain ways. And we proposed this to the studio, and they went along with it. I'm sure they weren't happy about it, but now we have to spend money on this play, and and then Martin, originally, who's passed away since, is an old friend and co-worker of Marty's. And I worked on it, talked about it, researched, met people in relation to Raging Bull. He was trying to do it. It didn't quite work. Anyway, then Marty just got Paul Schrader to pull the thing together and give it more of a structure. For example, there was a third character, the friend, besides the brother, and Paul pulled the friend out and made it just between the brothers. And then Marty and I went away to an island in the Caribbean for a couple of weeks and just worked on the whole script, just pulled it all together as far as just did the once over again, and that was it. So I don't know if that's really answering your question, but anyway, that's what I started with Paul,
So you say Paul's a friend, but you don't hang out?
No.
Who do you hang out with? Apart from Tiffany.
I have active friends who you don't know, people.
Try me.
And other friends who are not actors who you don't know.
As someone who's worked with some of the greatest scripts in the industry, what advice can you give to aspiring screenwriters?
Just write what you feel. And then the only way that you'll be unique is not writing what other people expect of you, especially if it's a formula type thing. Even if you're dealing with a lot of cliches, that doesn't mean cliches aren't real and good. I'm being kind of abstract in saying this, so I want to be careful. The most cliche thing is a baby being born, people dying, people getting married. It's just how you do it and how specific you make it and how you make it your own from your own experience. That's where you're going to excel, that's where you're going to stand out, hopefully, and just always be true to what you want to feel. And then how do you relate that to the world and how you see it and that character, what their relationship to the world is and why they're doing what they're doing. It's not easy, but that's the ideal. I know this is a little different, but Bradley Cooper, who did A Star is Born, I thought that's one of the best ways to work. He worked on the script, he worked on his character, he directed it, he did all these things. He spent all that time, and I thought that was a wonderful movie, very, very special. And he's going to do a movie on Leonard Bernstein now, the same thing. I said, there's no better way to do things than the way he's doing it. He's doing it all, and it's a real commitment, a true commitment.
Bob, if I may call you Bob, there's a saying that you should never meet your heroes for fear of disappointment. I think looking around the room today, we can say for sure no one's disappointed. However, I'd like to ask whether you have had heroes who have disappointed you or others who have surprised you in the most exhilarating way.
I've had heroes. They haven't disappointed me. They've just shown me that they're human. That's all. All actors, most actors that I know of my generation, all looked up to Brando. He was a great actor. He was nuts, but he was a great. He did a movie that I did, and the director said, "I'm thinking of using it." I said, "Okay, great." It's going to be what it's going to be. It's no problem. But we all loved him, and it was predictable, certain things would happen, but we had so much respect for him. He had a lot of faults. I don't even want to call them faults, that I'd say, well, I wouldn't do it like that, but we had great respect for him. So that was a hero.
Disappointments?
No, I'm not disappointed. Why should I expect more from him than I can't even get from myself at times, We all have, He did great things as an actor and as a person upset about the state of the world. So, that's it. I don't, there of course probably are people who you don't really know well. You expect them to have done something more and they made a left turn or a right turn. And they could, yes, there are some people I'm sadly disappointed about. And yet I understand their predicament. And I don't know how I would act in that situation. One is Kazan, the House Un-American Activities Committee. He named names, though he said those names were already known, but that doesn't matter. He was a king, and he was so well respected and loved. And I've worked with him. I did his last big film, The Last Tycoon. And he was as good as everybody always said he was. But I always felt terrible for what that decision he made for him. However he justified it, whatever it was. And I can't say, I don't know what I would do until that time comes. But that was, but not a disappointment, a sadness.
I want to finish on a good question, and I'm not going to ask the last question today. So we'll finish on a good one, but maybe two more. Serena. It's better be good.
Oh, God, no pressure. Thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to know everything that you've achieved in life. Are you really satisfied with what you've given the world, or is there more that you think needs to be done in your lifetime?
I think, you're never satisfied, and there's always a problem, always something to overcome. There's no such thing as, I think, if things would be easy, they'd be easy, then what? There's always a problem. There's no way around it. That's my life, It's sometimes the problems need to be created in order to solve that problem. It's one that has to be addressed finally, though it's always been lurking or there somewhere, and then finally it comes to the fore. It's time for it to come. That kind of, yeah.
I Amazing. I won't ask you to do the impression again.
Huh?
I won't ask you to do the impression again unless you want to do it for everyone.
The impression?
Yeah, though you're talking to me.
Yeah, right, okay.
The chap in the purple hoodie.
I want to ask you about de-aging and also about bringing back actors back to life. What is your opinion about that?
What?
Because many people are concerned that in the future CGI is going to be so good that we can just create actors in the future that a lot of young actors don't get the opportunity.
I'm trying to listen.
So I think it's about artificially resurrecting dead actors via CGI, and whether you have a view on that.
Whether I have one?
Yeah.
on that, it's funny if that's what you said. I couldn't quite hear you so well, but yeah, that's something that I'm looking into.
Fascinating, but one more question. Jesus, if you got your hand up, it needs to be a good one. Right at the very back. No pressure.
I was just wondering, if a movie was made about your life, who would you want to play as you and why?
That's good. Well done. If a movie was made about your life, who should play you?
That's a good question. I could never really feel comfortable about somebody doing my life because they'd always do it wrong, and I'd say, I understand, that's the way you want to do it that way. I don't know. There are many wonderful young actors who I'd be lucky to get them to do it. But, you know, it's like, I guess I'd probably have the reaction that anybody does when you do a story, you do their story. Some people are just happy you're doing it, so they're not going to say anything. And they'll basically sort of give you guidelines. Well, no, it didn't go quite like that. Let me just be a little more. But I'm not going to be around when if anybody ever does that, and then it won't matter. Some of my kids might say something about that. They might talk to them or whatever and get to sometimes you just have to take off on what you feel from that character, that historical character. Like, say, Raging Bull, Marty and I, at the end of the day, we did what we felt we made it our own, if you will, and that's what they say in acting school, make it your own. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's all accurate, but there's a feeling that's coming out that's been spurred by what you picked up from that character, that original character. And that's your interpretation of it. Like The Irishman, people say, well, Jimmy Hoffa didn't die the way he did. Some come up with these, I never understood how this one about, he was found in a or him or somebody in a barrel, like in New Jersey. Well, if you're killed in the Midwest, why would they bother to? But that's something else. The point is, as Marty eloquently said, it's our story. It's our take on this. It's not that it's the truth. We don't know what the truth is. Hopefully, the truth will come out. But it's our interpretation of this man's life and that situation, that story. That's all.
Bob, it's been such a privilege to have you today. Just before we give a round of applause, please could everyone just stay seated whilst we get Bob out of the room. But thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
There we go, Chip. Okay.